It's been 50 years since the release of Band on the Run. BJ, good morning. Give us a bit of a rundown and some insights into this particular 50-year anniversary.
Good morning, Al. Yes, I love this album. It's probably one of the most, I'd fair to say, underrated albums of all time in some ways. And then I think if you had a wish or wondered what a Beatles album could sound like in the 70s, and I think this is pretty much as close as possible to what you get, probably except for the odd Ringo Starr track. There are a few things, though, to just mention in relation to this particular release on the 50th anniversary. The first one is that for the streamers out there, there's no updated stereo edition. So what you see on Spotify is pretty much what you're going to get. Having said that, if you are into the high-end stuff, there is an Atmos edition that has been released. It's by Giles Martin, so he's produced it. And it's fair to say, it's definitely worth checking out. So I was not surprised that Band on the Run was very good, and as you'd expect so. But I think that the one that I just appreciated it probably as much as anything else is Let Me Roll It, which you just have a new fondness for that particular song. But really worth checking out, and it sort of carries on from what he's done with the Beatles catalogue, especially with Abbey Road. So that's one thing, and it's probably on the plus side, Al. On the negative side, you've got something called the Underdubbed edition. Now, the background to that is that they recorded all this in Nigeria. It's very storied how they did an original recording and it got stolen from them whilst in Nigeria. Now, this was almost the second take. They then went to London to do overdubs, and that's the final product. So this is really what they recorded there. Look, it's like Band on the Run naked. So if you've listened to Let It Be naked, you probably know what I mean. But I don't know, they're marketing this, and I think you'll probably listen to it once or twice, but you'll go back to the original recording, and it sort of almost feels like one of those, it's another marketing gimmick.
Yeah, look, for me, it was particularly interesting because obviously I'd heard the song Band on the Run before and absolutely loved it. And I'd heard Jet before as well, but actually taking some time to listen to this album that you threw to me in the last few days, I really particularly loved a later track on the album, 1985. I thought that was fantastic. And that was, of course, the B-side to the song Band on the Run. This was a number one album, mate, in the UK and Australia for quite a significant amount of time. It's still referred to in many top, 100s and 500s of all time. For me, legacy albums are interesting, and it's, I don't know, we've got, of course, Jeff Buckley's 30 Year of Grace coming up this year. If people were listening to this for the first time, and there might be some people listening to this for the first time, they're going to get something out of it. I mean, for the song Band on the Run itself, I would put it up there with the best of anything that the Beatles ever did. And that's a huge call, and we're going to get some comments probably about this. I don't know if you think that's a justified kind of call, but I think the transitions in that particular song are fantastic, and the second riff is just absolutely fantastic, mate. A highlight for me. I enjoyed this album. Didn't really enjoy the overdub stuff. I think for fans out there, they'll really get into that maybe, but it's a bit of a gimmick for me, mate. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, and fair to say, I think that it does stand up to some of the Beatles material. I think that it's like anything with Paul McCartney. This was his fifth album, remember, as well. So he's got to his fifth album, and that was his peak, which is quite incredible, given the highs that he got to with the Beatles. But it does give you a snapshot of the typical Paul McCartney / Wings album. And what I mean to say by that is that the good stuff is really, really good. So Band on the Run, your Jets, your 1985s, those types of songs. There's other songs too, but I couldn't see him looking John Lennon in the eye with Mamounia. George Harrison, he wouldn't tolerate that stuff. He'd just walk out, right? So and especially with the lack of exposure that he got with his tracks on Beatles albums. So there was always a little bit of that in a Paul McCartney Wings album. It's probably at its most minimal, it's fair to say, on Band on the Run, and I think that's why a lot of people love it. And I think that, to be honest, for people who are in touch with the Beatles catalogue, I think they're much, much better off having a look at some of the 70s output of the Four Boys, as opposed to trying to look for your now and thens, if that makes sense, and look for the next track that was never actually written and was actually almost fabricated, if you like. So So loved it. I think it's worth checking out. And it's like anything, like these exercises do tend to lead you down the path of getting the album out again and listening, which isn't a bad thing.
So that was our take on the 50-year anniversary of Band on the Run by Wings.